Welcome to the fifth presentation in the program. I call it the Shrine. It doesn't really have a name, but the Shrine was the nickname for my library that I had. I had like 2,500 books at one time, and made many discoveries with the books I had. And one of the things that we busted back in 1997 were the Dead Sea Scrolls. And since then, the Dead Sea Scrolls have been dead. And I want to point out that back in 1991, this particular book had come out called the Dead Sea Scrolls After 40 Years. And after 40 years, it's a pretty thin book. And if they wrote the book again today, it wouldn't be any thicker. And I didn't bring any of my Dead Sea Scrolls books because why bring a bunch of books here that I've read and I've annotated and just to brag, and that's just what I have left from some thieves who stole probably about half of my Dead Sea Scrolls information. I had Dead Sea Scrolls information from Poland, from Czechoslovakia, from Yugoslavia, from Russia, and we had put together many things, and we declared that the Dead Sea Scrolls were absolute medieval forgeries. And since that time, other people have made the same discovery. But we are copyright as making it first and broadcasting it first back in 1997. And just recently, my partner Paul had found online another guy that had busted it entirely in a different manner, but he did determine that the block Hebrew script didn't exist at the time the Dead Sea Scrolls were determined to be written. And he pointed out something that we never thought about. He goes, well, who is this Bedouin boy that made the greatest discovery of the 20th century, finding the Dead Sea Scrolls? Having done some research on the Bedouins and actually may have gone to the Middle East and met some Bedouins, pointing out that if a Bedouin boy had found the Dead Sea Scrolls, he'd be wanting some money for these scrolls. He'd be wanting some money to take somebody where it was. And so, in essence, the information, and when we busted the Dead Sea Scrolls, it has withstood the test of time. The same as our discovery that Alexander the Great's tomb is in Mayan County, Illinois, has withstood the test of time, as it always will. We've withstood 20 years of that, and in that interim, by the way, there have been like 16 or 17 pseudo-discoveries of Alexander the Great's tomb. And one most recently I want to point out was last summer of 2013, where this guy said that he found Alexander the Great's tomb in Jordan, showed all these fancy pictures, and come to find out it was all Photoshopped. It was entirely a hoax. And now it's recognized as being a hoax. They never had anything, and they never will. It doesn't matter where they go in the Middle East. You got all these people looking for Alexander's tomb in the Middle East, and they will never find anything. So, getting back to the Dead Sea Scrolls and making the determination that this Hebrew block script just pops up on the scene out of nowhere. And it doesn't even have a Semitic syntax. As we looked at some of the Egyptian hieroglyph decipherments earlier, Semitic syntax is just all over the place. It's noun, verb, predicate, adjective, it's just everywhere. Like I couldn't find a good place to put the word perfect. And so the Hebrew block script pops up on the scene, all these beautifully constructed compound words with a Latin syntax and Latin prefixes and suffixes. And me, I had declared back then that as someone who had studied ancient languages for 25 plus years, at the time, I couldn't prove to you or anyone that Hebrew was ever a spoken language before 650 AD, and that is very conservative because it really comes about probably around 800, 850. But I say give it the 200-year edge to really be on the safe side. And the Hebrew script, like what we talk about, comes about with the Masoretic text, and it's all a wash. It's all a wash. And so we wanted to put that, the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's why you never hear anything more about them. We killed them, they're dead. Just like we have taken other subjects and people's paradigms, just twisted them up, thrown them away, and you don't hear anything more about them. I'm going to show you a book. Got this book out in the van, and I want to point it out. We're going to take a little trip now and show some other things and slice through a few more paradigms that people have, because they just seem to keep hammering it away. So we're going to put a couple of things to rest. Now this is the Voyages of Gnomon, Voyages and Travels, and it's printed in 1704. That's what the date is down there at the bottom. The MDC CIV. That's 1704, and there's a little bit more of it there. Printed in London. So it is in a very, in an Old English style. And what we have here in this book is all these beautiful layouts of stuff printed in 1704. And behold, we have the oldest printed Mayan calendar in the world. But it doesn't look a thing like we have the Mayan calendar of today, does it? Now that's because the Mayan calendar of today doesn't exist, and it's not Mayan, and neither is this one. There is no Mayan calendar, and there never were any Mayan people, and there are no Mayan prophecy. So if somebody says, oh, what about the Mayan calendar, which there was all this big scare, and there's a lot of things that the media and our government puts out simply to scare people. Scare this, Y2K, I never bought into that, but all these people, anthrax coming out of airplanes, where, I don't know if you remember back in the, after 9/11, people went to the stores and just bought visqueen plastic and duct tape their windows because that's what they heard to do on TV. I never wasted my money. So there's a lot of things out there that they put just to scare you, to try to influence you and cause you fear. But this calendar is clearly Nahuatl. And to my knowledge, I don't believe they ever found anything like it in the Yucatan, where the alleged Maya supposedly were. And studying ancient Mexico and all the data that I could glean and all the actual words that I could pick out from their grammar, is that there were only two family stocks of languages out of ancient Mexico. It's your Nahuatl and your Yucatan, and they did have a lot of similarities in them. And so I want to take you back to 1704 when we look at this, and you can see how other calendars were derived from this. Now the Mayan calendar, as it gets up to the 60s, takes on a whole other shape and size and look. And then you see it through the late 60s, and then through the 70s, and people say, oh, the Mayan calendar predicted. I said, well, which one? They don't know. They never saw the books that had the old Mayan calendars in them. So you talking about the one from the mid-70s or the mid-60s? Well, they didn't know. They don't know. They don't have a clue. It's just what they see on TV and what they see on some stupid History Channel show or some silly National Geographic or Discovery Channel, which is basically nothing but propaganda. And so I wanted to show you this, and you can do your own research on it. And the word Maya, as we know it, comes from, as far as I can determine, back when Christopher Columbus was sailing through parts of the Caribbean or near the Bahamas or something. He saw a boat went by that had tunics in it, and he's hollering off to them in Spanish or Church Latin or whatever. Who are you? Where are you? And I'm sure that people couldn't understand what he was saying, but they go, Maya, Maya. So that's where the first point of the Maya that we have that comes from. And while I'm on this, as far as the Aztec, I call them Nahuatl because the word Aztec just pops up in the English language, all the languages, about 1840. None of the chroniclers with Hernando Cortez, Bernal Diaz, or any of the old explorers, none of them say the word Aztec. It's just a modern word that pops out of nowhere. So anyway, I wanted to show you this, and and let you get a gandering on it. It explains some things, and I'm not so sure that there ever was a calendar involved with any of it. And even still today, watch what you read or exposed to concerning the Maya, because it's all pretty much a bunch of bunk. And I made the prediction publicly in 1997 that within a few years, other people would be, or other Mayan manuscripts would just be popping up on the scene. And sure enough, they did, they were, they are. So let's look at some more. Now we're going to branch into a couple more things concerning Atlantis. I mean, everybody is into Atlantis, and you still have 5-10 books every year printed about Atlantis, which is just all the same old, because these people don't do any research. They think if they can go to Google and type something in and find something there, you're not going to make any discoveries on Google. You're going to make discoveries reading the classics and going through old books printed in the 1800s, 1700s. They don't want to read. They want to have it all done for them. And this is Athenaeus, the Dionysius, which means pretty much the connoisseurs, or people like the delicatessens. He wrote about fine wines, fine dinners, desserts, presentations, and stuff like that. And there are some things. This is a copy from the Harvard Globe Classical Series, which I use a lot. I use Harvard, Yale, Cambridge, and Oxford a lot for my research, as well as Encyclopedia Judaica, Britannica, and the Catholic Encyclopedia as well. And we're just going to look at a couple of things here. It says Plato, in his account, let me raise that up a little bit. Plato, in his account of Atlantis, calls dessert metadorpia in these words: the land bore for the inhabitants in those days all kinds of sweet-smelling things, and it bore also cultivated crops in greatest abundance, and a quantity of fruits, and all the enticements to pleasure in desserts. Well, now we kind of get a little bit more of the fact that we're talking about desserts that they had in Atlantis. And now we're going to come back to one of my, Athanasius, was writing probably in the mid-2nd century AD. And his is Diodorus Siculus. He's writing about the time of Julius Caesar and the civil wars, 50 BC or so, 55 BC. And he's writing in Greek. And what we do is we go here. The first people against whom they advanced, according to the tale, was the Atlanteans, the most civilized men among the inhabitants of those regions, who dwelt in a prosperous country and possessed great cities. It was among them, we are told, that mythology places the birth of the gods in the regions which lie along the shore of the ocean, in this respect agreeing with those among the Greeks who relate legends about this. We shall speak in detail a little bit later. And he's talking about how the Amazons came to be at war with the Atlanteans. All right? Upon entering the land of the Atlanteans, they defeated, and they're talking about the Amazons, they defeated in a pitched battle the inhabitants of the city of Cern, as it is called. Now, Cern, Cernan, however you want to say it, there were two of them, the same as we have two Thebes. The same as there are two other cities around in the Mediterranean region. And so it's really easy to get them crossed in some of these these old references. You had a Cern that was a city in Atlantis, and you had a Cern that was also a city on the other side of the Mediterranean. But if you read more about each one, there is a large separation between them. Now let's pick it up again. The pitched battle, the inhabitants of the city of Cern, as it is called, and making their way inside the walls along with the fleeing enemy, they got the city into their hands, and desiring to strike terror into the neighboring peoples, they treated the captives savagely, put to the sword the men from the youth upward. led into slavery, children and women, razed the city. Okay? Here we come again. Talk about the inhabitants of CERN became known among their fellow tribesmen. It is related that the Atlanteans, struck with terror, surrendered their cities on terms of capitulation and announced that they would do whatever should be commanded them, and that the Queen Marina, bearing herself honorably towards the Atlanteans, both established friendship with them and founded a city to bear her name in a place, a city which had been raised. Okay? Here we are again. Whereupon the Atlanteans presented her with magnificent presents, and by public decree voted to her notable honors, and she in return accepted their courtesy, and in addition promised that she would show kindness to their nation. Here we go down again. They say, was asked by the Atlanteans to invade the land of the aforementioned Gorgons. See, we have Gorgons here, and since the natives were often very warred upon by the Gorgons, here we have the Atlanteans and the Gorgons. But when the Gorgons drew up their forces to resist them, a mighty battle took place in which the Amazons, gaining the upper hand, slew great numbers of them. Okay, so now, we have the Atlanteans who are fighting the Gorgons. The Amazons come in, fight the Atlanteans, and defeat them. And the Atlanteans say, hey, will you kick the Gorgons, because we don't like them, they're a pain in our rear, so please take care of the Gorgons. Well, where did the Gorgons live? They came from Gorgon, right? Where is that? Gorgons. And this is from an encyclopedia of place names printed in 1899. Gorgons, daughters of Phorcys, whence also called Phorcides and Ceto, dwelling in the western ocean near Nike and the Hesperides, however you want to call that, or in Libya, meaning Africa. Africa was known as Libya. So here we see another place where people come from, that you see it right there, dwelling in the western ocean. Okay, well, there's not a lot of places in the or islands far out in the western ocean, but here we have another. So we have Atlantis and the Gorgons. Now I'm going to predict the future here. I am so good at predicting the future, I can tell you what the psychics are going to say. I can accurately predict what the psychics are going to say by doing this. In a few years' time, you're going to have psychics that channel the Gorgons. So you get all these people that channel the Atlanteans, and I guess they travel around, they make good money channeling Atlanteans. Well, we're going to give them a lot of good meat. We're going to give them a lot of people. And I often wonder, well, how come you don't channel people from Friesland? It was an island that sunk. We have a lot of information on that. So I like to introduce things and give some of the soothsayers and the astrologists and some of the channelers, which this is what we're going to be doing here. But since we have all made mention of the Atlanteans, we believe that it will not be inappropriate to recount what their myths relate about the genesis of the gods, in view of the fact that it does not differ greatly from the myths of the Greeks. Now the Atlanteans, dwelling as they do in the regions on the edge of the ocean and inhabiting a fertile territory, are reputed far to excel their neighbors in reverence towards the gods, and in the humanity they showed in their dealings with strangers, and the gods, they say, were born among them. So we're getting more information concerning Atlantis, and how some writers are recording legends and lore that they bore gods, or could they have been large people, giants, warriors, just absolute victors. And funny thing in several of these books, when you start talking about Atlantis, we start coming across things like this. Okay? And since he was a cheerful observer of the stars, he foretold many things which would take place throughout the world. Okay? And this is talking about Uranus here. And And for the common people, he introduced the year on the basis of the movement of the sun and the months on that of the but anyway, just pretty much he based the sun and the moon on months of the year, of when to plant and when to harvest, and when certain plants would come up. So he's just introducing that, okay? And we don't want to go into that too much right now, but we're going to be going back slowly into our round earth theory as we go through this a little bit. And for those of you who weren't here yesterday, I had a theory about the round earth. I believe that ancient man knew that the earth was round because he could come out and look at the sun and look at the moon, and those were balls, clearly. Well, maybe he figured out that this was a round circle, also a round ball. And here we got some more about Atlantis. Of these sons, Atlas received as his part the regions on the coast of the ocean. And he not only gave the name of Atlanteans to his people, but likewise called the greatest mountain in the land Atlantis. Atlas. Now, one of the things that we introduced in 1997, just to reframe some of this and bring it back up, is I was reading from the oldest printed map in the world of Atlantis, and reading more about what it says in Latin, which none of the books written about Atlantis go into at all, is that Kircher is quoting more from Plato, explaining that there was a machine that they tunneled through the mountain through Atlantis, mining some kind of mineral, be it gold, I don't know what it was, and he wasn't sure either, but the mountain had become so honeycombed and riddled with these holes from this machine going through it that a moderate earthquake just came up, and when it did, the mountain collapsed upon itself, and after that, the whole island just sunk down into the ocean, which made sense. But that also leads us to wonder, have the modern books of Plato, which I guess we have been gifted with from the Catholics, were there parts and pieces that they pulled out? Well, if we continue reading, we'll see that maybe they did. They also say that he perfected the science of astrology and was the first to publish to mankind the doctrine of the sphere. And that's not only the earth sphere, but the celestial sphere that surrounds the earth. Now let's move on down here. Talking about the king, having once climbed to the peak of Mount Atlas, was suddenly snatched away by mighty winds while he was making his observations of the stars, and never was seen again. Well, I wonder if that could be some kind of abduction story there. You know, Hesperus was there, and somebody came and got him, and he said, "Hey, you're coming with me." It seems a little difficult for me to swallow that a wind took him away and nothing was ever heard of him again. Atlas, down here at the bottom, Atlas, the myth goes on to relate, also had 7 daughters, who as a group were called the Atlantides, or the Atlantides, however you want to say it. The Atlantides. Now we're going to look at Atlas's daughters here a little bit, and connect a couple of more dots. Talking about Hermes here, the other Atlantides also gave birth to renowned children, who became the founders in some instances of nations, and in other cases of cities. Consequently, not only among certain barbarians, but among the Greeks as well. The great majority of the most ancient heroes trace their descent back to the Atlantides. And I think that since we're in one part of the book, the Atlantides, or the Atlantides, however you want to say it, that is real close to Atlanteans, and we're talking about the same people. Now look at this. These daughters were also distinguished for their chastity, and after their death attained to immortal honor among men, by whom they were both enthroned in the heavens and endowed with the appellation of Pleiades. The Atlantides were also called nymphs. So here we have more subject matter for the astrologists and the channelers. I have connected for them clearly and easily the Pleiades with the Atlantides and the Atlanteans and the Pleiades. So now they're going to say, predicting the future again, I always knew that the Atlanteans had something to do with my Pleiades. Because you got all these Pleiades channelers, you got all these Atlantis channelers, and now I'm kind of pulling them in together so that they can all work together, see? All right. I hope you aren't taking any of this serious, just what I'm showing you. I'm just throwing out humor. But, okay, so anyway, let's go to the geography of Strabo. Strabo is writing in the late 1st century BC, 10, 11, 12, 5, 7 BC or so. And he's a good writer. I like Strabo, and he's great for a lot of good things. Let's look at some more of them. Let's look at some of them here. He starts out here, page 391, concerning, okay, we're talking about here, and on this point, he does well to cite the statement of Plato that it is possible that the story about the island of Atlantis is not a fiction. Concerning Atlantis, Plato relates that Solon, after having made inquiry of the Egyptian priests, reported that Atlantis did once exist but disappeared. An island no smaller in size than a continent. Okay? All right. So now we've got Strabo coming in here. Look at some more Strabo. It's page 393. Then after an attempt to find fault with those who divided the inhabited world into continents in the way they did, instead of by certain circles parallel to the equator. Is it possible that 2,000 years ago Strabo knew about the equator? That they knew that the earth was round, that they had already made parallel lines to be able to determine that, well, excuse me, but I think, wasn't the equator first discovered like in the 1500s or something like that? Or Marco Polo's time of the 1100s is when that first come about? But here we have Strabo writing over 2,000 years ago about the equator. Well, what's he talking about? Let's look a little bit more. Through means of which they could have indicated variations in animals, plants, and climates, because some of these belong peculiarly to the frigid zone and others to the torrid zone. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, so now let's go into Dionysius Of Halicarnassus. He's writing about buck 73 AD or so, somewhere along in there. Latter part of the 2nd century AD. Okay? And what is, getting back more to my modern theory of a round earth, he says on page 327 here, for in the northern parts the pole of the axis upon which the firmament turns is elevated, and of the 5 zones which girdle the sphere, the one called the Arctic zone is always visible on this side, whereas in the southern parts the other zone, called the Antarctic, is depressed and invisible on that side. So it is reasonable to assume that those signs in the heavens and in midair are the best which appear on the best side. I guess that blows our flat earth theory right out the window, doesn't it, as far as Strabo is concerned, talking about it 2,000 years ago. All right? Now we're looking at Vitruvius. He was an architect. He designed probably several buildings in Rome, probably a couple of temples. I believe he also did forts, probably worked in Frontius. He's writing sometime in the 1st century BC, and we're not sure when, but he's writing in Latin. And let's see what he says. He's a very brilliant writer. We'll start here at 9. Perhaps those who know many names of the winds will wonder, because only 8 winds have been described by us to exist. Now here in America, you always have the Native Americans, the spiritual, going the 4 directions. Well, I can't, it looks to me like everybody had 8 directions. And that's what he's talking about here. Okay? But if they perceive that the circumference of the world ascertained by the sun's course and the equinoctial shadows of the Gnomon and the inclinations of the sky have been found by Eratosthenes of Cyrene with mathematical calculations and geometric methods to be 252,000 stadies, which give 31.5 million paces, while of this, the 8th part, which the wind seems to occupy, is 3.9 million paces. They ought not to wonder if in so great a space, one wind, as it moves, with its inclinations and retreats, causes varieties through the change of its current. Maybe he's talking about weather patterns. And down at the bottom, we want to just note this. His calculations are remarkably correct in view of his imperfect equipment. So, others also figured out that the world was round. King Yuba did it, Eratosthenes did it, other high priests, and I'm sure that the Phoenicians / Carthaginians, the Carthaginians were Phoenicians, but not all Phoenicians were Carthaginian. And I'm sure they knew it too. I'm sure that everybody knew that the earth was round or whatever. But now we're going to look at what is a gnomon. A gnomon is that part of the sundial, or even before they had the Roman sundial, where they would put out a stick to cast a shadow of the sun to determine the sun's movement. And what you'll find also, if anybody goes into it, is that either the arm can be known as the gnomon, or the shadow itself can be known as the gnomon, or the calculation itself can be determined as a gnomon. All right? Canon or belief or action of the geometric gnomon. And so it's a word that can mean a couple of different things, but they're all relative to the same idea, the same definition. All right, now we're going to come in here to Pliny, and he's again writing in Latin, 1st century AD. They say that Pliny the Elder was, or Pliny, as some people call. I like Pliny. I like long vowels. They say that he was killed attempting to, or right before he was ready to escape from when Mount Vesuvius blew and covered Pompeii. His, I believe it was his grandson or great nephew wrote the account of his death at about 77, 76 AD or so. We're going to look at a couple of brilliant writers. Many of his works still exist today, and they're just fantastic. All right, so he was talking about that being the name of certain small islands. Here we start with Polybius informs us that Cyrene lies at the extremity of Mauritania. Now, Polybius is a great writer. If anybody was wanting to jump into reading ancient history, Polybius flows very, very well. He is a great writer, and he brings you to the edge of battle, to the edge of your seat, and he lines up one army against the other army, gives you all the details and stats, and then he stops and takes you somewhere else. It's just absolutely wonderful. So anyway, he's talking about the islands that lie at the extremity of Mauritania. Now you'll notice that this Mauritania has an E in it. This is the far end of Africa or somewhere. We're not sure exactly where he's talking about, but we're talking about northern Africa towards the coast. It could be this side of the Pillars of Hercules or on the other side of the Pillars of Gibraltar. It doesn't really matter. But he goes here, over against Mount Atlas, a mile from the coast. Cornelius Nepos, who was an ancient sea captain, whose works are, some of his works are still available, gives it as being nearly in the same meridian as Carthage. Well, here we go, again, using Strabo, we know that they had lines and that they had navigational capabilities. And 10 miles from the mainland, and as measuring not more than 2 miles round. There is also reported to be another island off Mount Atlas, itself also called Atlantis, from which 2 days' voyage along the coast reaches the desert district in the neighborhood of the western Ethiopians, and the cape mentioned above named the Horn of the West, the point at which the coastline begins to curve westward in the direction of the Atlantic. Okay, now talking about some other islands here. Opposite this cape also there are reported to be some islands, the Gorgons. That's probably real similar to the Gorgons, wouldn't you say? All right, that's on page 487. Let's look at some more. Now here, I wanted to show you, this is the Latin script in these books, okay? And I wanted to show you that right up here is the word Atlantis, so that you can see how the word Atlantis appears in Latin. It appears as Atlantis. Okay, that should be pretty simple enough, right? And something else I want to point out to you here is that you see here in Latin, only about 3/4 of the page is used up, and there's a lot of space between these words here. So if you condensed it all, you probably have the script coming down to here, and then what you see is there's a whole page of English, a whole page of English. And that I just wanted to show you that in Latin, the language, one word being actually idiomatic is indicative to Latin. That a word with its prefixes and suffixes can mean a phrase or a string of words put together, compound words. And that's why you see all these compound words just pop up on the scene in Hebrew. And if you study Hebrew, the first thing they'll tell you is Hebrew is an idiomatic language. When there were no Semitic idiomatic languages, the only idiomatic language was Latin. So it was pretty obvious that modern-day Hebrew has a Latin syntax. It is a bogus language. All right? So here we go. Let's take a look at some more. And we're talking here at the top, from the Gorgons Islands, past Mount Atlas, to the Isles of the Ladies of the West, as 40 days sail from those islands to the Horn of the West, as 1 day's sail. Nor is there less uncertainty in regard to the report of the islands of Mauritania. It is only known for certain that a few were discovered by Yuba off the coast of the Atlantis. And here down, and he goes in which he had established a dyeing industry that used the Gaetulian purple. Now, it's interesting that King Yuba, or Yuba, as we say, whenever you see just the word Yuba, they're talking about King Yuba II. And especially at this point in time, because his father had been destroyed along with the forces of Pompey in northern Africa right before Julius Caesar took sole possession of Rome. Okay, so Yuba is on a lot of the stones that we have from Illinois, and there are stones that talk about it. They talk about we came here with help from the good king, the good benevolent King Yuba II, who assisted us, who gave us ships. And according to Pliny here, in all of his works, he really admires Yuba II. He really the elephant, which a lot of it that he discovered back then, which those works are lost to time. We're just finding out today about the elephant, about what an amazing creature it is and how they communicate over long distances. And Yuba had made these observations. And Pliny also says that there's no one that knows the Atlantic Ocean better than Yuba, that he is the master sailor, that he knows everything there is to know about the Atlantic Ocean, that nobody knows more about the Atlantic Ocean, about the Mediterranean Sea, or the areas west, east of there in Arabia. That he is the man. Okay. So here, some people think that beyond the islands of Mauritania lie the Isles of Bliss, and also some others of which Sabosus, before mentioned, gives not only the number but also the distances, reporting that Genonia is 750 miles from Cadiz. Now Cadiz is a large port town in southern Spain, and this is C-A-D-I-Z is how we see it spelled today. But the way it was spelled years and years ago is G-A-D-E-S, Gades, Gades. And that's why I wanted to point out yesterday concerning the Melungeons, how Porto Cadiz, or Port of Cadiz, it still exists there today. And the river that comes out of Spain there is called today the Rio Guadalquivir, but in ancient times, Plutarch, everybody calls it the Beatis River, River Beaton. Okay? So here we're looking at more and Pluvia and Caprinia, the same distance from Genonia. Okay, here we're talking about that the Isles of Bliss are 250 miles northwest from these. All right, here's another ancient island, Envalis, Planasia. Okay, now let's come down here. Everyone's measuring 300. It measures 300 miles round. Talking about an island that on it trees grow to a height of 140 feet. Okay, well that's not an outrageous height. We have trees today that will go 140 feet. Not very common, but they do exist. And let's look at more here. About the Isles of Bliss, Yuba has ascertained the following facts. They lie in a southerly direction at a distance of 625 miles sail from the Purple Islands. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if Yuba is in a boat and he's traveling 625 miles west, southwest, northwest, whatever, that's a pretty good distance down the road. He was obviously a lot of times in a boat. He provided that a course be laid north of due west for another 250 miles and then east for 375 miles. That the first island reached is called Ombrios, and there are no traces of buildings upon it, but it has a pool surrounded by mountains and trees resembling the giant fennel, but from which water is extracted. So what's he saying there? What's Pliny saying? He's saying that pretty much Yuba has done a lot of traveling in this area, knows his stuff, and has made a lot of accurate observations. So is it possible that Yuba knew about Happy Land, about Hunepher, about Caesarea 3, about the continent that lied many days' sail to the west? Sure doesn't appear so. When we look at the Fortunate Isles, Isles of the Blessed, ancient name of the Canary Islands. Fortunate Isles of the Blessed, or the Happy Lands. Here we see Happy Lands. That's from the late 1800s. Were originally imaginary isles in the Western Ocean where the souls of the good are made happy. With the discovery of the Canary and the Madeira Islands, the name became attached to them. And here underneath it, the Carthaginian fleet under Hamilcar appears to have turned homewards from this point and to have touched at the islands of Madeira. Okay? So you see where we're going with this. We're trying to paint a picture that the ancients knew not only about North America, but they knew about Atlantis. They knew about several other places as well. All right, let's look at some more. And this is still reading in Pliny. Coming down here. Talking about Numidia, the two Mauritanias, the Atlantic Ocean, the Straits of Gibraltar. In this latitude at noon, at the time of the equinox, a sundial pin, or gnomon, 7 feet long, casts a shadow not more than 4 feet long. Okay, we're getting back to the fact that they're hitting around, that they kind of figure the sun goes over, the earth is round, and all this stuff is putting together here. All right, let's look at some more. At the equinox, it's kind of not clear, but the 13-foot gnomon throws a shadow 24 feet long, while the longest day and the longest night measure 14 2/5 equinoctial hours. So they're talking, it's hard for me sometimes to hold the book down and click and whatever, so some of my scans don't turn out perfect. and there at the bottom, the Gnomon, 100 inches long, throws a shadow that goes 127 inches long. The longest day is 14/8/15 equinoctial hours. Now, when we start talking 8/15, you're talking really good mathematics. That's just over half. Just over half. And today, we don't use 15ths to determine anything. It's either tenths or fourths or half or thirds, maybe a fifth, maybe a sixth. But nobody uses 8/15 for sure. And then you see down here at the bottom, periods from sunrise to sunset. This is just in the footnotes, 12 hours all year round. Okay, so they're putting a lot of it together. Okay, starting in this area here, according to Polybius, who we talked about, the distance in a straight line from the Straits of Gibraltar to the outlet of the Sea of Azov is 3,437.5 miles. And the distance from the same starting point due eastward to Sicily, 1,250 miles. To Crete, 375 miles. To Rhodes, 187.5 miles. To Swallow Islands, the same. To Cyprus, 225. And Cyprus to Seleucia, Pieria, and Syria, 115. All right? So we can see that somebody has done some research here. Agrippa calculates the same distance in a straight line from the Straits of Gibraltar to the Gulf of Scanderoon at 3,440 miles. These guys got around. They weren't just bimbos on a boat. So I'm going to leave you with this. And here is a short list, or a complete list, a complete short list of the islands that Pliny documents that are in the Western Ocean beyond the Pillars of Hercules. The Atalules, Capria, Envalis, Genovia, Liguria, Umbrius, Planasia, and Pluvialia, however you want to say it. And this, now sometime in the future, we're going to start seeing channelers grab onto this, and you're going to start seeing information on Google that is just absolutely outrageous, erroneous, and people will make up this, that, oh, my ancestors were from Pluvialia. I'm a Planasian. I channel the Planasians, or the Nigurians, the Juninians, and all of these appear to be actually real places. Well, did this just slip past the Atlantis and the Pleiades channelers? Did it just, oh man, I can't believe it. I missed that. But people don't read these books. Thank goodness I can read fast and slop through these books pretty doggone good and make notes. And all of my books, if I can't mark in a book and fold the pages up and throw a piece of paper in it and write all over it, I don't want to read it. Don't hand me a book that I can't mark up. But they're all real places. As near as I can tell you, all of these are real places. Are there any questions? And thank you. We've concluded the 5th lecture in our program series. Thank you.